Like everyone, this pandemic has been really rough on me personally and my psyche. I've had to struggle many times just to try and turn this place around as the waves of the pandemic strike, and often we've had to change things overnight. It's breakfast time in our Loaves and Fishes free restaurant on the first day of the lockdown in Sydney 2021, and the queue is endless, and that's kind of led to a day-to-day existence. Since the beginning of this pandemic, I have been pushing for the homeless and the needy to get vaccinated. Of course, they've been right at the bottom of the list, but today, here at Ashfield, those who come, the homeless, the poor, the needy, will get their first shot of Pfizer vaccine. And that to me is just a miracle. All of these people, in so ways, they're so at the bottom of the list, they're off everybody's agenda. But they are the ones who are most vulnerable. Many of the people who come here have 3 major illnesses, chronic illnesses, so that if they caught coronavirus, God knows what would happen to them. Well, here we are in the middle of the chaos of all of the past week. I feel like I'm standing in the middle of a battleground, you know. The battle has moved on and there's the dead bodies everywhere. And it all began because one of our guests tested positive to COVID-19. They contacted me and we had to immediately change everything we did. During this lockdown, we have kept all of our volunteers at home because many of them are quite elderly, and so if they caught the coronavirus, they would get very ill. Luckily, most of them and most of our guests now have had 1 shot. So for this week, what we've done is we're bringing in paid chefs and paid people to run the program. Now, what happens is they come in for 3 days and then another group come in. So we're making sure that the whole thing works all right. But what happens is none of our meals have not been provided. We've been actually doing all this through this time. Now you can imagine the stress of turning everything around in 2 seconds. And that's basically what we've done. The meals are still made fresh here. They're taken out to the van at the front. They go out in the vans to all the areas they've got to go. So everybody will get a hot, nutritious, fresh meal. That's been my commitment from 40 years ago when we began all this. It's still going on. It's gone on through the whole pandemic. It will go through this pandemic and way beyond. As you can see, we're supplying meals from the front of Exodus at the moment. The guests are all lined up in a COVID-safe way to make sure everything's safe. We can't use the restaurant at the moment because we've got it all deep cleaned and we want to make sure everybody keeps safe. So people come up one by one and collect their meal and then go away to where they are. Now, people have said to me, how can you keep doing this? Because all you're doing is attracting people. Well, many of these people have got nowhere else to go. They haven't got a home to live in. So what they're doing with that. But we can make sure that the meals get out in a safe way. Now, these people are coming from the local area. What we're doing is we're delivering meals to other areas so that people can get food from us in a COVID-safe way. It's a very difficult time, but we're doing our best to get through it. What we have learned from this pandemic is we are all in this life together. Now, we have spent the last generation or so with the division between the rich and the poor getting more and more. The divide has become greater and greater. And what this pandemic is teaching us in a painful way, a really painful way, is that we are all in this life together. We are all in this life together. The stuff we have accumulated doesn't matter. Our very lives matter. At this moment, as I talk from here, there are really vulnerable communities around where I live and where we take the vans who are so vulnerable to this. And we are committing ourselves now. Our health van will be going out and testing and providing vaccines where they are most needed. And that is with the most vulnerable and the most needy, because looking after them means everybody gets looked after. And that's the positive that's come out of this pandemic. So many people, I only have to walk down the road and people come up to me and they are much gentler and they ask how it's going and they want to give help. And what we've had to say is, thank you very much, and just be aware of how vulnerable we all are to one another, and how the only way out of this is caring for one another and loving one another. Just make sure you're all distanced. Hello, Billy. How are you, boy? You're not sick at all? Good on you.